You would be surprised to know that I was a shy kid growing up. I'd run away at birthday parties, ones that weren't even my own, because I was uncomfortable by the attention dedicated to one person. I joined youth theater because my sister was in it, and sadly my best role was a statue in Beauty and the Beast. Unfortunately, theater did not break me out of my shell, but band did. That's where I learned how to command 26 awkward misfit clarinets, whose limbs were uncontrollable to be the best section of the season. From there, I learned how to put my foot down, as that was what was asked of me. But the blacktop of a school parking lot is a lot different than a classroom. And rather than working with 26 relatively shy students, I was now working with 130 plus rambunctious, confident, and joyful teenagers. One would think that at this point in their life, a 23-year-old would be able to handle a class of youths. Well, early on I realized that my big bad wolf attitude I adopted in high school was going to need some adjustments. It is not easy enough to demand respect simply because you're the teacher, and that does not mean that students these days do not respect authority. They can, but they're very eager to determine whether they respect you or not for themselves. In the classroom, I'm often seen as the good cop because my style's more nonchalant, I'm a little more merciful, and my tolerance for youthful shenanigans is rather high. Before the internship, we were told not to smile until November, but that's not who I am. I have far too big of a mouth to hold a smile back. And trying to rule my classroom with intimidation is not my style. It may have worked for band, but it was not going to work in my classroom. Throughout the early phases of the internship, I struggled with putting my foot down because I was honestly nervous. I was afraid whether or not the students would have a different perception of me. But I think I was afraid of my own perception because I never believed that one should rule with fear because fear does not demand respect, only obedience. I don't want kids to obey me. All I want is respect. My relationships with my students are the most important part of this job, but it hasn't been easy at North Farmington. My buttons have been pushed and doors have been shut, literally and figuratively, to block out any disrespect I refuse to tolerate. In this scenario, my students were taking a quiz, and while quiz days are often nice and quiet, this class was a little rowdy, as I've a lot of students who like to be in the spotlight. But my rule for quizzes are that students lose points for talking, and that was apparently a difficult concept for that day. One of my students would just simply not stop talking. He was so eager to take this quiz because he studied really hard for it, but after multiple warnings, I lost my patience and I snatched the quiz from him. I said, "Nope, you're done." And he reacted as if I slapped him. He was a student that I was relatively close with. Stopped by early, before school started. He would hang out after school. But in that moment, we were strangers, and he began to curse at me in front of the class. The only thing I could compare that to is an episode of Jerry Springer. My students stared at me in shock because no one had ever spoken to me like that, and they didn't know how I was going to react. And I have never freaked out or blown up at my kids, though it would have been very satisfying. But to my student, I said, "If you're going to behave this way, you can leave. We'll talk about this tomorrow." And he grabbed his stuff and stomped out of the room, cursing like he's in a cartoon. While on the inside, I was incredibly frazzled. I had to keep class going. I still had a responsibility because we had things to do. I had called down to the office just to ask the hall manager to check on him and make sure he was all right. The rest of my hours went smoothly, and by the end of the day, I hadn't even thought of it until my MT approached me and told me she heard of the incident. My MT had been in the office at the time when the student walked in on his own volition, sat down, and put his head in his hands. When his AP tried to talk him through it, my MT said that my student muttered, "I really messed up. I don't even know why I acted like that. I can't believe I did that to Miss Wiley." She had said that the student wanted to speak to me at the end of the day, and as I am always staying late after school, he knew where to find me. As I was working with a student on SAT prep, I saw a figure hover outside my door. I looked up, and there he stood poking his head in. "Miss Wiley, can I talk to you?" "Of course, just give me a second." Starting the clock for my SAT prepper, I stepped into the hallway and waited for him to start. I didn't want to preface the conversation with, "We need to talk about what happened." He stood there with a shy smile, his eyes wide with nervousness. He would sigh and I would smile because I didn't want him to feel pressured. I don't even know what to say other than, "I'm sorry. I'm just a terrible person. I shouldn't have done that. Reacted to you like that. You're literally my favorite teacher, ever, and I would never speak to you that way. I just wanted to do so good on that quiz. And I know why you took my quiz. You were right, and I was totally wrong. I should have just shut up. But you know me, when I laugh. But I just wanted to tell you that I'm really sorry. Are we okay?" I don't want to ruin what we had. You're literally the only teacher that has looked out for me, and I just treated you like dirt. I don't want you to hate me. I can't live with that, knowing you might hate me. I'm just so sorry. Cue the violins. Whenever I watch reality TV, it's always satisfying to watch a fight or argument explode and think, ooh, I wish someone spoke to me like that and I would... ... But this wasn't a TV show. I've never screamed at a person in my life. I would be terrible for television. But this was a student who was genuinely sorry, who spent literally the rest of his school day in the office, not because he was facing discipline, but he was just so overwhelmed with what he did. He didn't come to apologize because he was told by his AP. He apologized because he wanted to repair whatever tears there potentially were in our relationship. It's easy to vilify teenagers because that's literally what every generation does. Kids these days, they say. This idea that the current generation of youth are wild, reckless, and rude. Which sometimes is true because there are people of all ages who are all of those things. But the dynamite that is essential to adolescence is why I'm here. It's the vitality and excitement and sometimes unpredictability that I enjoy as teenagers continue to grapple with who they are and who they're going to be. My relationships with my students are the reason why I'm here. My love for these kids goes beyond the sometimes uncomfortable, awkward, explosive moments that are really only temporary. Because my love is where they are learning, growing, and becoming more solid and dynamic people of tomorrow.